boyfriend's mother said, "My son deserves better than you." She didn't know I was buying her salon. What if the one person who was supposed to accept you, support you, and love you more than anyone else was the one who humiliated you the most? Hey, my name is Andrea. I never thought I would be betrayed by someone I loved, especially not in front of so many people. The words hung in the air like an unwelcome shadow, their weight crushing me. "My son deserves better than you," his mother had said, her voice dripping with an unmistakable disdain that left no room for doubt. I stood there, frozen, as her eyes scanned me, judgmental and cruel. It wasn't just the sting of the words themselves, it was the context. His mother had always been kind to me, at least in front of him. We shared laughs over dinner, exchanged pleasantries during holidays. But this was something else entirely. Something deeper. Her words didn't just cut through the atmosphere of that dinner party, they sliced through the very fabric of my self-worth. It was the way she said it. So matter-of-fact, as if she'd been rehearsing this line for a long time. I wasn't just an outsider to her anymore. I was the reason her son's life wasn't perfect, the cause of his unhappiness. In a single moment, she reduced me from a person he loved to nothing more than a burden he was unfortunately carrying. I wanted to scream, to defend myself, but the room was too full, too many eyes on me. I couldn't let myself crack under the pressure. Instead, I forced a tight smile, trying to mask the wave of humiliation crashing over me. The sharp taste of shame clung to the back of my throat, and all I could do was nod, pretending that everything was fine. The evening went on as if nothing had happened, the laughter and clinking glasses filling the spaces where my thoughts were. But inside, I felt everything unravel. I had always been the quiet one in the relationship, the one who kept my feelings to myself, never wanting to stir the pot. But this was too much. How could I let this go unnoticed? How could I let someone who meant so much to me tear me apart in front of people I barely knew? As I sat there, trying to focus on the conversation happening around me, I realized something I hadn't wanted to admit to myself before. I was afraid. Afraid of losing him, afraid of standing up for myself, afraid of what would happen if I truly confronted his mother. And I couldn't help but wonder if this moment would mark the beginning of my breaking point. I remember thinking, what will I do now? Will I choose to stay silent, as I've always done, or will I finally take control of my own story? Because, in that moment, the power wasn't just in his mother's words, it was in my response to them. Would I keep allowing her to control the narrative, or would I stand up for myself, no matter the cost? I didn't know how it would unfold, but one thing was clear, my life would never be the same again. Looking back now, I realized that the moment with his mother wasn't the first time I'd felt like this. In fact, it wasn't even the worst of it. The humiliation she caused me was just the latest in a long string of betrayals, each one smaller than the last, but each one leaving a scar deeper than I cared to admit. I had been in love with his son for nearly 3 years, and every day, I tried to convince myself that it was worth it, that he was worth it, but the more I invested, the more I lost of myself. And those little betrayals, they were never big enough to make me leave, but always just enough to chip away at my sense of self. It was in the small things. The way she would drop by our apartment unannounced, and I'd pretend I was fine with it because I didn't want to seem rude. The comments about my cooking, about how it wasn't quite like the way he liked it, or how she missed the good old days when he was living at home. The little jabs that no one else would notice. But I did. I noticed every single one. Then there were the quiet criticisms. The ones she made under her breath, when she thought I couldn't hear. He deserves someone who knows how to care for him. Or, I just hope you don't take him for granted. Those words would linger in my mind long after the conversation was over. They'd gnaw at me, causing me to question everything about myself. My worth, my ability to be loved, my place in his life. And it wasn't just his mother. There were times when my own friends would drop hints, too. He's such a catch. Are you sure you're good enough for him? They never said it outright, but I could feel the weight of their judgment in those words. I started doubting myself, second-guessing everything I did, every move I made. Was I good enough for him? For them? Was I truly worthy of love, or was I just some consolation prize? The more I tried to be what everyone else wanted me to be, the more I lost sight of who I was. I became a shadow of myself, constantly seeking validation from people who didn't see me for who I really was. The doubts crept in, and soon I found myself questioning if I even knew who I was anymore. The little pieces of me were slipping through my fingers, and I didn't know how to stop it. When his mother had told me, in front of everyone, that her son deserved better, I didn't just feel humiliated. I felt exposed. She had pulled back the curtain on everything I had been trying to hide. My fears, my insecurities, my deep-seated belief that I wasn't good enough. But more than that, I felt a rage I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. How dare she? How dare she undermine me, belittle me, and make me feel small in front of everyone? She didn't know the sacrifices I had made for her son, the things I had done to make him happy, to be the partner he deserved. No, to her, I was just an outsider. Someone who could never truly understand the kind of love he needed. And it hurt. It hurt so much that I didn't know how to deal with it. I wanted to yell, to scream at her, to tell her exactly how much her words had broken me. But instead, I sat there in silence, nodding, pretending it didn't affect me. I wasn't ready to face the reality of it all. But as I sat in that room, surrounded by people who didn't see the real pain beneath my surface, I couldn't ignore it anymore. The pain wasn't just in the betrayal itself, it was in all the moments I had overlooked. It was in the quiet, constant undermining of my worth. How could I confront all of it? How could I face the people who had hurt me, including myself? Could I confront the hidden wounds, or would they remain buried forever, festering beneath the surface, eating away at everything I hoped to be? The pain, the humiliation, and the constant doubt, it had all become too much. As much as I hated admitting it to myself, I was exhausted. For so long, I had lived in the shadow of other people's expectations, their judgments, and their criticisms. I had tried so hard to fit into a role that wasn't mine to begin with. But now, sitting alone with my thoughts, I realized something that made my chest tighten with a mix of fear and exhilaration. I was done. The humiliation with his mother had broken something in me. It wasn't just the insult itself. It was the years of buildup, the quiet erosion of my self-worth that had come from tolerating it for so long. For the first time in a long while, I realized that I had been letting others define who I was, define my place in this relationship in my life. And I was sick of it. I couldn't keep living like this. I had to make a choice. Would I continue to allow these betrayals to control my story, or would I stand up, take back my power, and finally become the person I wanted to be? I spent the next few days in a haze of reflection. I couldn't help but replay the scene with his mother over and over in my mind. Each time, it stung a little more. But with each replay, I also realized something new. I didn't need her approval. I didn't need anyone's approval. I had been seeking validation from the very people who didn't see me for who I truly was. And worse, I had been letting them shape my perception of myself. For the first time in years, I thought about what I wanted. Not what he wanted. Not what his mother wanted. Not what anyone else expected of me. But what I needed in order to feel whole. And that's when it clicked. I wasn't just a passive participant in my own life. I had power. I had the ability to take control. I didn't have to endure this pain, this constant feeling of being lesser than. I could choose to change everything. But as much as I wanted to act on this newfound clarity, I still felt fear creeping in. Fear of rejection, fear of confronting him, fear of what might happen if I pushed back against the people who had always been in charge. Would he leave me? Would his family turn on me completely? I remember sitting on the couch one night, staring at the empty room, and feeling a surge of resolve. It didn't matter what happened. I had to be true to myself, no matter the cost. I was no longer going to be the person who bent over backward to please everyone else. I had spent far too long hiding my feelings, trying to keep the peace. But peace at what cost? I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. I didn't have a concrete plan just yet. But I knew one thing for certain. I was going to take back my voice. I wasn't going to keep letting others dictate my worth, my happiness, my future. I had to find the courage to act, to confront everything that had held me back for so long. It wasn't going to be easy. The fear still lingered, and the emotional scars from the betrayals would take time to heal. But in that moment, I made a promise to myself. I wasn't going to stay silent anymore. I would face the people who had wronged me, face my own insecurities, and take control of my narrative. The path ahead wasn't clear, but one thing was certain: it was time to make a choice. Could I find the courage to change my life, or would I hesitate when it mattered most? I didn't know yet, but I knew this. Something was going to change. It wasn't just about standing up for myself anymore. It was about reclaiming everything I had lost: my voice, my self-respect, my sense of control. Revenge wasn't a concept I had ever considered before. In fact, I had always prided myself on being the type of person who tried to avoid conflict, who kept the peace at all costs. But this was different. This wasn't just about feeling hurt. It was about righting a wrong that had lingered for far too long. I started to plan, and for the first time, I felt alive in a way I hadn't in ages. There was a strange power in the act of plotting my next steps, in taking my fate into my own hands. But I had to be careful. I had to be precise. Revenge wasn't going to be about throwing a tantrum or screaming my pain to the world. No, it had to be methodical. It wasn't about hurting anyone. It was about sending a message to his mother, to him, and to everyone who had ever made me feel small. I wanted to show them that I wasn't a passive bystander in my own life anymore. I wasn't someone who could be trampled on without consequence. If they wanted to hurt me, they had to realize that I had the strength to fight back. The plan formed in my mind like a delicate dance, each step carefully measured. I knew that I couldn't just confront them head-on, not yet. It would be too much, too sudden. I needed to wait for the perfect moment, the time when their guard would be down, when they would least expect it. But what would the confrontation look like? What would make them feel the weight of my pain without me completely losing control? The idea came to me one afternoon as I sat at a coffee shop, staring out the window. The answer was simple, almost too simple. I needed to expose them, to show them what they had been doing all along, and make them face it in a way they couldn't ignore. The moment would come when he and his mother would be completely off guard, when they would least expect me to stand up for myself. And then I would show them what they had done. I would strip away the pretense, reveal the truth, and let them see me, not as the passive woman they thought I was, but as someone who had found her power. The idea sent a rush of adrenaline through my veins. I felt in control for the first time in so long. But as the plan unfolded in my mind, I realized that there were risks. What if it backfired? What if my actions pushed him away? What if my revenge made me feel emptier than I could imagine? Still, I couldn't stop the momentum. The more I thought about it, the more I knew that this was the only way I would ever be able to truly reclaim my life. It was the only way I could finally take back what they had stolen from me: my dignity, my sense of self-worth, and my ability to stand tall in my own life. The plan began to take shape, piece by piece. The details were subtle, yet powerful. It would all come together when the time was right. They wouldn't see it coming, and that was exactly what I wanted. But even as I plotted, a small voice in the back of my mind whispered doubts. What if I didn't need revenge? What if confronting them in a different way, in a way that didn't involve tearing them down, could lead to real change? Could I get the satisfaction I was seeking from revenge, or would it just be another empty pursuit that left me feeling even more hollow than before? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had to move forward. I couldn't wait forever. The plan was set, and it would soon be time to execute. But as I stood on the edge, ready to make my move, I couldn't help but ask myself one last question. Would I feel victorious when it's over, or would the consequences leave me feeling empty? The moment had arrived. My plan was set into motion, every detail carefully calculated, every move executed with precision. It wasn't about acting out of blind rage anymore. It was about reclaiming my story, about showing everyone who had ever underestimated me that I had power, that I was not someone to be ignored or dismissed. The time for passivity was over. He had invited me to dinner that night, a casual get-together, or so he thought. He had no idea what was coming. His mother, as usual, would be there too, along with a few of their family friends. I had rehearsed everything in my mind 1,000 times, but still, as I walked into their home, a knot formed in my stomach. The anticipation, the fear of the unknown. What if I messed this up? What if it didn't go the way I had planned? But there was no turning back now. I had committed to this moment. I had chosen to take control. The evening began like any other dinner with his family. Awkward small talk, forced laughter, and the familiar feeling of not quite fitting in. His mother, as always, had a sharp gaze, watching every word I said and every move I made. But tonight, I wasn't afraid of her eyes on me. Tonight, I had something she didn't expect. As the night wore on, the conversation shifted to casual chatter about relationships. It was the perfect opportunity, and I could feel my heart race as I made my move. "Can I say something?" I asked, my voice calm but firm, cutting through the conversation like a knife. It wasn't the loudest or most dramatic way to begin, but it was enough to get everyone's attention. I could see their faces shift, their curiosity piqued. His mother looked at me, eyes narrowed slightly. She knew something was coming. She just didn't know what. "I think it's time we had a little chat," I continued, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "About the way you've treated me. And more importantly, the way you've treated your son." The room fell silent. Even he seemed caught off guard. He didn't know where this was going. But I could see the tension in his face, the way he instinctively wanted to step in and protect me, but was unsure how to. I turned to his mother, who was now looking at me with a mixture of disbelief and annoyance. "You've made it clear that I'm not good enough for him," I said, each word deliberate, each one carrying the weight of everything I had been holding in for so long. "But I think it's time for you to understand something. I'm not here to compete with you. I'm here because I love him, and I want to be with him. And I'm tired of you making me feel like I don't belong." The room seemed to close in around us, the air thick with tension. But I didn't flinch. I wasn't going to back down now. I had come too far to let this moment slip away. Her response was sharp, laced with venom. "You think you can change him? He'll never be happy with someone like you." Her voice was cold, almost too calculated, as though she'd said this before in her mind, prepared for this very confrontation. But I could see something else in her eyes, uncertainty. A crack in the armor. "I'm not trying to change him," I replied, my voice unwavering. "I'm here to be his partner, and for the first time, I'm standing up for myself. I'm not your punching bag anymore, and I'm not going to let you dictate my life." His eyes were on me now, a mixture of shock and admiration. He hadn't seen me like this before. The woman who had always been quiet, who had swallowed every insult, every slight. He didn't know what to say, but I could see the shift in him, the recognition that I wasn't the same person who had walked into this room hours ago. The silence stretched on for a few more moments, the weight of my words settling in. His mother didn't have a response. She couldn't, and when she finally spoke, her words were softer, less certain. "I just want what's best for him," she muttered, but the edge in her tone had dulled. I could tell that the power dynamic between us had shifted. I looked around the room, meeting the eyes of everyone present. The tension was still palpable, but something had changed. I wasn't invisible anymore. I wasn't the woman they all assumed I would be. I had fought back, and I wasn't done yet. But as I sat there, the weight of my actions settling into my bones, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the victory I had imagined? Would it be enough to bring the satisfaction I was hoping for? Or had I crossed a line I couldn't come back from? The silence that followed my confrontation was deafening. For a few long moments, no one spoke. It felt like time had come to a standstill, like the world was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. My heart hammered in my chest, but I kept my posture straight, my eyes focused ahead. I had said what I needed to say. I had stood up for myself, and there was no turning back. But as the evening wore on, the weight of my actions started to settle in. I could feel the tension in the room still simmering, a quiet undercurrent of unspoken words and unresolved emotions. His mother, though clearly rattled, had put on a mask of politeness. She made small talk, attempting to steer the conversation away from the tension, but I could tell she was shaken. Her facade had cracked, just slightly, but it was enough for me to see the vulnerability beneath. And then there was him. He hadn't said much during the confrontation, his eyes wide with disbelief as I stood my ground. I could see the conflict in his face, the way he shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to support me or placate his mother. He was caught between two worlds, his loyalty to his mother and his love for me, and I knew it wasn't easy for him. I could feel his hesitation, and it tore at me. As the night drew to a close, I found myself alone in the kitchen, washing dishes, trying to process everything that had happened. I wanted to feel victorious, to feel that the words I'd spoken had somehow lifted the weight from my shoulders. But instead, I felt empty. The anger that had fueled my confrontation was slowly being replaced by doubt. Had it really been worth it? I had confronted his mother, yes, but at what cost? She hadn't backed down. She hadn't apologized. She hadn't even acknowledged the hurt she had caused me. Instead, she had shifted the blame, making it clear that it wasn't just me she didn't approve of. It was the very idea of me, of our relationship. I realized, then, that my need for validation, for some form of recognition from her, was misplaced. Her opinion of me would never change, and I could spend the rest of my life seeking her approval, but it would never be enough. No amount of words, no act of defiance, could make her see me as anything other than an outsider. The true weight of the moment hit me when I realized the consequences of my actions weren't just external. The confrontation had caused a ripple effect, one that had reached deep into my own heart. In trying to reclaim my power, I had stripped away the layers of fear and self-doubt I had been living with for so long. But in doing so, I had also opened myself up to the possibility that my actions might have been a reaction, a moment of emotional impulse, rather than a step toward real healing. What was I really seeking? Was it the satisfaction of seeing his mother uncomfortable? Was it the hope that he would see me in a new light? Or was it simply the need to be heard, to be recognized as someone worthy of respect? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that revenge, no matter how carefully calculated, would never be the answer. It hadn't given me the closure I was hoping for. Instead, it had left me feeling more hollow, more uncertain than before. I had proven something, yes, but in the process, I had also lost a part of myself I wasn't ready to part with. I left their house that evening with a heavy heart, the echoes of my words still ringing in my ears. I didn't know if I would ever have the relationship I wanted with his family. I didn't know if he would ever fully understand what I had done or why. But one thing was clear. I had crossed a line, and now it was time to confront the aftermath of that decision. And in the quiet of my apartment, alone with my thoughts, I found myself asking the most difficult question of all. Had revenge really brought me peace, or was I just running from the deeper wounds that still needed healing?